I'll go ahead and kick this one off today.
Awesome.
So if you've been on any of our previous webinars or worked with me, you understand that I'm the higher ed specialist here at BIS. And so normally I do these webinars, but today we're going to do something a little bit different. Tim is actually going to be the one kind of running the webinar because he's got an extensive background with invoices. And when we came up with this idea to focus invoice process and some of the things you can do there specifically for higher education, he went and did a lot of research and found a lot of things that would make it more meaningful specifically for higher education. So I told him, I was like, you run with it. You've got the experience here. And that being said, Tim, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Logan. Yeah, so this got started is, we know that I've been doing invoice automation for 25 years, and I can honestly say that no two companies do it the same way. So it's one of the big challenges that always been around invoice processing. But higher education is its own animal. And when I stumbled across some stuff that really stuck out to me that we have never addressed before, I went down a rabbit hole to really understand what the accounting process is around higher education. And that's this webinar as a result of that. Before I get started, though, we do have everybody muted. Please use the Q&A to ask us any questions. Please ask us questions. We try to answer all of those live while we do this. And we keep these at 30 minutes for the reason so we don't keep you all on and keep this really long. So I'm going to try to burn through some content here as fast as possible, but we always stop to take questions. So let me get started here and find the right screen because, of course, Zoom has changed buttons on me again. That's not the one we want to see. And let's see here. Let me close you. I don't need you. All right. And Logan and Colin, you can let me know if we're showing the right screen. This should be the fund of accounts, the chart of accounts.
That is correct.
Okay. So the biggest eye-opener was that in higher education, they use a chart of accounts, which is completely different than how your standard AP process works. And how it's different is, universities slice up every dollar that comes across in multiple ways, not just in GL accounts. So, the staff are really under pressure to make sure this coding is done correctly because we've all seen this recently. Anything that gets coded wrong and is discovered in an audit, what is our immediate assumption is that something nefarious is going on, right? So you hear all these stories about misappropriation of funds. Well, 90% of those misappropriation of funds are nothing more than an incorrect coding. And I'm going to walk through how Grooper can enforce some of these rules and really help you find these issues and make recommendations there. So one of the things we've started to do recently is use AI on top of, beyond just extraction, beyond what you've seen us do in the past, is really use it to help the data validation operator, or in this case, the AP clerk, make a decision, right? And back up their decision. So the other piece of this is, why was this decision made? Because now what I can do is I can have kind of a backup. Think of AI as a backup saying, here's why the decision was made. And I can push that off to an audit log so that when auditors come in, they can see, here's the decision, here's why it was made. Even if the decision was made incorrectly, at least you have it documented and see, here's our decisioning process. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it. So I am going to spend a lot of time talking about what's called FOAPAL, which is this fund or organization, account, program, activity, and location. It's called different things for different systems. So the FOAPAL is primarily around banner schools, but if you're on Workday, they call it something a little bit different. So Workday calls it Worktags, and then PeopleSoft calls it ChartFields, and then Oracle has more of a normal AP processing that they call it, but everybody calls it something a little bit different. So primarily how I have this set up is around Ellucian banners interpretation and how banner schools do it. It does not mean that it has to be done this way. And in all things, Grooper is always highly flexible. So let me get over to, of course I can't share it until I get over there. So I have to share it and then move over. All right. So again, Logan and Trevor, let me know if we can see our lovely Grooper screen. And let me get my picture out of the way because it's distracting.
Yep, we can see it.
Awesome. All right, so I have a batch in here we're going to look at in a second because it's in the order of the way I want to do things, but I'm going to go ahead and create a new batch and just show simulated scanning for those that haven't seen Grooper. So in this case, I'm in the Grooper screen. Again, we're all within client now, so I'm running this in a local installation, but completely through a web browser, right? So in this case, we do self-hosted, so you guys can host this either in a cloud instance or in your own data center. We have a SaaS solution coming out soon, so if you're interested in a SaaS solution, please reach out to Logan or myself, and we can walk walk you through what that looks like. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just create a batch here of that type. And I've got my scanner all set. Again, I'm simulating scanning where I'm just importing from a directory. And I've got about 12 invoices, I think is what these are. And these are completely made up invoices, just so you all know, because one of the hardest challenges we have is finding data that we can and documents that we can use that don't have proprietary information on here. So I've got a bunch of silly ones made up that get the idea across. They're multi-page documents as well as single page. So pretty straightforward on this on the scanning piece. If you have more questions on how we handle different imports, let me know. But we can do obviously scanning directly. We can pull from email. We can pull from FTP sites. We can pull electronic from folders, and pretty much any way you need to get systems documents into your system. So I'm going to go ahead and close the batch, send it to its next process, and we're going to watch it go through its defined process. In this case, we convert everything to text. Of course, that's what we do. And it's one of the big values that Grooper brings to the market is we're doing exceptional OCR. And because of that, I can heavily leverage the AI models that are out there. We've been doing this a long time, so we could do everything the hard way, as we like to say, and we have done everything the hard way. But now what we can do is leverage AI to make it not so hard to do. So this demo, I set up this entire demo in just a couple days. And obviously this is not my only job. So it's gotten much easier for us to do much more complex demos in a shorter amount of time. So this one's already through, but I'm going to actually go to this other batch. So while I was talking, we OCR'd it, separated the documents so if we could put each invoice in its own document. We are actually using AI to separate. And then I extracted the data. And on the extraction, I'm using AI, a bunch of lookups, because I have my chart of accounts based in XML in here. And then I have a PO database behind this as well, so that I could get some information across. So all of that was happening while I've been babbling here. So let's go ahead and look at what that looks like. And good, I'm way ahead of time, so I can slow down. All right, so in this screen, again, this is the Grooper validation screen. This is where I'd sit here and basically validate my information and then decide how I want to go forward. And this is going to be a little bit different because, again, I'm heavily leaning on AI in this case to help me. You'll see, first of all, this screen is set up. It can be set up however you want it. This is just kind of our default view based on some internal CSS files that we have. I see immediately this little icon up at the top here that I'm highlighting. It says 6 and a little page with a guy in it. Well, this tells me the number of documents that have errors in it. So out of my 12 documents, 6 of them have errors, and we're going to address that. And because some of these errors are things that I have forced that as an AP person, I'm going to want to look at. But these first several documents come through fine. And that's because these are purchase orders or invoices based on purchase orders. So I'm able to go ahead and do a lookup into the purchase order database, pull off the information, make sure it matches. And as long as it matches, we're good, including my fund, organization, account, program activity, and location. So all of that makes up this. Again, this usually ends up being a text string that gets passed across to the ERP. We could do either or. I've left it more as you can see it's usually a numbered based string. I've left it more to something that a human can read. Although AP operators, when they get this down, they know that 110 is a unrestricted fund. They know these things off the hand. So we could do it either or. I just didn't want anybody to think that this is never the way you have to set up Grooper. This is just the way I've chosen to set it up to show this off. So in this case, we're good. All the data has been pulled off. It's been validated. But really, the highlight of today is being able to utilize AI to give me a recommendation. So in this case, you see at the very top, I say it basically has a warning that says there's no warnings for this invoice. It gives me my recommended coding for each one of these, which it's already pulled across, so that's fine. But then it also gives me a reasoning. This is really where I think we're really deviating from what we've shown in the past. Is I'm able to give you reasoning for why this decision was made. Now, this reasoning, all of this text can be pushed off to an audit log so that when an auditor takes a look at this invoice, they can see clearly why it was coded. They can see if a human deviated from what the AI said as well. So this gives us a lot of flexibility. You see, I missed one. Did not turn my phone into do not disturb. There we go. It's probably one of you on here calling me to try to heckle me, so appreciate that. All right, so as we move through one of these, so this one's good. The first couple of these are going to be the same, right? So again, no warnings. And if I look at it in these drop downs, you'll see that we've got a bunch of different drop downs in here. I don't think I'll have anything on these second ones. These drop down boxes are linked. So as I choose something in the fund, the options in my organization will change. And if I choose an organization, the options in my account will change. And that's the benefit of Grooper doing some either database or XML lookups, is I can enforce your chart of accounts right into our system. And I didn't have to do anything more than point this at an existing system. All right, so I'm going to keep walking through a couple of these until we get to an invalid one. And so I think it's this next one will come up. There we go. So now we got a bunch of red, right, which is what we want. I want to flag this document to be able to walk through it. I want an operator stopping here to say, okay, wait a minute, this has got a problem. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my AI recommendation, and there's nothing grant related. Okay, that's good, but it does have some of my recommended settings here for my chart of accounts, and then it has the reasoning here. So let me see what the reasoning is first. So the reasoning is a catering invoice. Okay, it's just kind of going through its reasoning. Great. So let me look here. So it's all unassigned in this case. Oh, and I see why. There is no PO number on this. So this was a non-PO invoice, and this is really what, let's face it, most AP struggles with non-PO, right? If this is PO, it's easy for me to validate all this data, as you saw with the first 5 of those, right? They just go through, as long as everything matches. Now, I could go back through and look at one and be like, oh, that's coded incorrectly. I need to recode it, and I've left that in there so that we could do that. But that's not the case on this one. So I have no PO, and I have this set up now to basically stop if there's no PO number. So when I clear this off, you'll see that will resolve itself. Now I've got to go ahead and come in here and manually code this document. So in this case, it's telling me what to do, unrestricted operations. The organization is for student services. So let me find student services. And my account is travel and training because, this is basically some sort of, looks like a lunch event that was done. And then these last 3, program activity and location, are usually optional accounts. So I don't have to code these in a lot of things. And this is where, depending on the university, depending on who we're talking to, is how they'll do things differently. So I'm going to go ahead. I've instructed the AI to always give me program activity and location as well. So I'm going to come down here and say, okay, this is also student services. The activity is some sort of catering event. So let's grab that. And then my location is main campus. So my grant name, I don't have a grant name so I'm going to go ahead and say it's not grant related. I apologize. This should have cleared when I get done here. All I have to do is clear that out. There is no grant on this one, so it doesn't need to worry about that. And you notice as soon as I cleared that off, everything is no longer red. I'm ready to move on to my next document. So same thing here, very, very similar. I'm going to go clear off my PO. I don't have a grant, so, and I need to validate that my invoice numbers and things like that are correct, but I have my same issue here where I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, this is unrestricted. And you'll notice that here's the difference here. You have unrestricted, federal grants, and restricted gifts. And this is really where this chart of accounts plays for universities, right? Unrestricted is normal AP operations. Federal grants, though, obviously everything has to be tracked correctly, and money can only be spent for certain things that are related to that grant. And then restricted gifts are also, higher ed gets a lot of donations and gifts that have stipulations to them. So there's a lot of tracking that has to go along with that as well. So in this case, unrestricted. My org is my facilities management, because this is a bunch of building maintenance, right, on this one. So let me go ahead and grab that. My program is going to be just more operations. If I could click that, my activities, more building maintenance. And you can see how some of these can get, overboard, keep going. So I don't necessarily probably need to do all of these. And again, grant name, I don't need to worry about. I'm going to go ahead and move that on, and we'll move on to our next document. And you'll see as we click on, we're down to 4 of these. Okay. So this one, I do have some grant information on, but I have no errors. So in this case, I'm validating the grant. So I really do want to make sure and double check. So that's my recommended is federal grants. That 210 fund is federal grants. And biology department, I could come in here and validate that. I'm going to leave these numbers alone because these were pulled from a database, but we could easily have the dropdowns be the same way. And I'm just doing this for the sake of time. So So you see that all of this is pulled across correctly. I've also validated the grants with a separate database in this case. So I know that this invoice with this PO is associated to this grant. So now this is obviously one that I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to. So I'm going to get down here to my reasoning and make sure, okay, the items are lab related. Okay, those look to be lab related items. Great. And biology department, that makes sense. And program research, that makes sense. Okay, so everything looks sane. I don't smell anything funny. And I have the backup now of AI telling me, yeah, you know what? Here's what's recommended. This looks good. I don't have any concerns. There's no warnings on here. And then I also have a nice reasoning here that tells me that this looks correct. So I'm going to move on. Okay, more red. Awesome. So let's take a look at this one. I see immediately that I do have a grant, so I need to be careful here. I got a warning at the top that it's outside of the grant window in this case, so that's obviously bad. And do not code the grant. So what I want to do here is I have a choice now, and we didn't show this, and Logan, we were just talking about this before the webinars, how we wanted to handle this. Did Logan drop off? Looks like he might have dropped off. There's a new functionality of Grooper called, we have a route functionality that, unlike traditional routing, we have our export, which is where we push data and documents off to the target system, but we now also have a route activity that allows us to basically take documents and change the process or change where they're going based on data that's on them. So think of it as a dynamic routing. So in this case, it'd be one that I'd probably want to figure out how am I going to dynamically route this document to an exception process. So typically you have your happy path, which is everything's good as you saw previously, or I fixed everything and it's going to go on its way and it's going to get funded. But then I also have ones like in this case where, all right, I've got a grant window issue that's talking here, although here I have some information that says everything's valid. So I have a discrepancy. So as I go through this and look, the data's all correct. My totals are right. I don't see any other issues. Let me see if I can come down to look at my reasoning. Okay, so we have information. Everything looks good. Whoops, except for that one piece. So in this case, what I'd want to do is I'd want to go ahead and move on to the next one. And when the batch exports, any detail that's in here that's not accurate or that's not completely coded would trigger an alternate route. And that alternate route is going to be an exception process where now somebody needs to come and take a look. Because typically what happens in this situation is now I have to go back to whoever owns this grant, the department head typically. So in this case, it would be, I believe, the physics department is who this one is for. So what it was originally coded for. Well, we can't really tell from here. So that's one of the challenges here too. I get travel expenses. It came back and said it's for this grant. So I'd have to go ahead and send this to whoever's in charge of that grant and say, hey, we've got an issue with this invoice. So before I pay for it, I need to resolve that. And you need to tell me how to resolve that. Right. So whether I come in here and say, okay, this is federal grants. Let's see what it asked me to do. This is, so see, I have my recommended here. It's for the physics department, and I'm not sure how it got back that it was for the physics department. That's probably in the database lookup. And it also has my account, which my account in this case is travel and training. So I can go ahead and do that. There is no PO. So in this case, my errors went away. So this is one of these where I'd have to figure out, okay, how do we want the next process to go? So let me move to one that's a little more clear. Okay, so in this case, I have one that you can see I've got red all over the place. I definitely have an issue. I have no PO on this one again. So I go through and look. I've got no PO number. I also have an invalid grant that came up that said, hey, you know what? I have a grant and it's invalid, so I really need to pay attention here. In this case, I get a warning back from AI saying the grant is fully expended, which means, of course, they've spent all the money. So now, again, back to what I was just talking about, is we have to figure out where does that money go? Where does that money come from, right? Who's going to pay for this now? Is it going to, you can't pull it from this grant. So now I don't know how to code this. So in this case, this would be one that would definitely go into that exception queue that would get sent to the department head or whoever's in charge of that grant. And then they could decide, okay, right, we need to take this money out of unrestricted, or are there other gifts that they could take it from? But there's no information in either the database or on the invoice for me to actually understand how to code this one correctly. So in that case, I'll move on. And what will happen is as we close this batch out, this will automatically get sent off to the next one. Now I could have a button here where I right click and I could send this off to somebody. I just don't have that set up. So here we have a share. We have, all of these different pieces here, all these different pop-ups that I could have something here that allows me to route this one document right off to an exception process. That is completely configurable to somebody and to institutions. And we've, again, 25 years of doing this, we've yet to find two people doing it the same way. So let me go ahead and move on. So next one, okay, I have another non-grant expense. This one actually doesn't look too bad. So grant appears valid is what my AI is telling us. Okay. I have no PO. Let me validate that. There is no PO number because, a PO number missed on OCR extraction will throw this same error, which is exactly what you want, right? So when I move off there, okay, great. So I'm cleared of my PO number. I have a federal grant, so I'm going to go ahead and assign this. So federal grants, physics department again, and this is travel and training. And we can come down and just continue. As you see, again, these are all linked to each other as they come across. They don't have to be. They could all be filled separately. This is, again, just part of this configuration of how a university does their chart of account, how they map their chart of accounts across. This is coming straight from the ERP. Typically what we have is people will export their chart of accounts and their PO database for us. Excuse me. All right. So activity I'm on is it's research and travel. And then my location is usually my main campus. So I'm good. Everything is cleared here. I have my grant name. I have it's valid. I've only got 3 errors left, and this should drop down to 1 more. Okay, and one last one here. I have an invalid grant because of an expired grant. So we're, again, outside of this grant window, and I get a warning up here that says, okay, it's related to the grant, but that is not correct. So I need to, again, decide how I'm going to handle this one. My coding came across, so it's actually found it in the database, so that's good. But outside of that window, again, I need somebody to look at this to know what's going to happen there. So this one I would do the same thing on. I would not touch. I would let this get handled downstream, and I can look at my reasoning here, okay, and it has everything down here, but the problem will be without having an expired grant, there's nothing for me to really do here. So let me go back to this other one that was bad. So what I want to do here, this one is fully expended, so that's fine. I have one other that I thought, here we go. This one is expired. Okay, great. So yeah, those are the last two we have at this point. Is these two, when I close this out, would move on to that next process. These two would be split off from the happy path, as we call it. So they would go off to be exported to or routed to the next process. And this could be a workflow in whatever imaging system, whatever workflow system they're using, or it could be simply another process that AP now does research on, where a different AP operator pulls these exception batches down and says, okay, I got to get Dr. or the dean on the phone and find out exactly what's going on with this grant, so I can have it coded correctly before I fund it. The key here is I can catch this before it's coded, right? Because once it's coded, that's where that money comes out, and that's where the errors happen, right? So at this point, I am good to go. So I can close my batch. I don't have anything after here, so it's not going to let me close this. But what we can do now is go back and, whoops, wrong button. We can go back and look at the ones we scanned. Whoops, wrong button again. I'm just having issues. And this is the same batch. As we go through these, you'll see this is the exact same batch that came across. And we'll get a little bit of differences here because of the order it was in. So this is why I switched it up so I could show you these things in the correct order. So I don't see we have any questions on this now, and I went a little bit faster than I normally do. So we do have some time to answer any questions or show any pieces that I may not have covered. So at this point, I'm going to open it up to questions and see if anybody has anything they would like to talk about or to investigate a little bit more. You guys are a quiet bunch today. Well, all right. I think we're going to, without any questions in, we're going to go ahead and bring the webinar down. We'll all get a recording of this. And I appreciate everyone's time today, as always. If you have any questions about this or follow-up or want to see or delve into anything more on this, feel free. Oh, we got one out here. Where are you getting the AI? Oh, okay, great question. So where are we getting the AI reasoning? So let's show that. So the AI, what we're basically doing is, in this case, I apologize, I have to get into the actual configuration of this to show you this, but this is where it's set up. So, and another one coming in about to when that gets happened. So what we're doing here is, again, I've got several different versions looking at this system. So in this case, I have basically I'm using GPT-5 Mini. So I'm using a smaller model. If you haven't seen, our latest update of Grooper allows you to adjust the reasoning and let me just show you. The reasoning and where is it? There we go. Reasoning and the verbosity for the GPT-5 family of models. So in this case, I have the reasoning effort turned down and the verbosity turned down, so it won't give me too much. And what I've basically done is I have given the AI an instruction that this is what you are. You're assisting with FOAPAL strings. I've uploaded my chart of accounts that I'm using as an XML file and my programs, right? So I've basically given it access here. I could give this access as a database table or other things too. I just chose to do it this way. And then I actually have it simulating some stuff for some invoices that we know are invalid. Okay. So, and that's it. And I basically have some very simple instructions telling it what to do when it runs into invoices that have grants that are invalid. And that's pretty much all we're doing on the AI reasoning. And I can switch models that I want to use. But it's very straightforward. We let you basically put whatever in you want to. Now, I also could have done this through our fill method, right? So there's other different ways I could have done this. I separated out the extraction from the actual reasoning because I wanted to use a different model. So this is a great example where Grooper allows you to do two separate things in the same pass. So in my extract, I'm using 4.1, an older GPT model, because I don't need the reasoning, quite frankly. I mean, all I'm doing is pulling off data off of invoices. I don't need fancy reasoning on that. So I chose to, in this case, here's where I'm doing my extraction. You notice I'm not doing the extraction on any of the program stuff, and I'm not doing anything on the AI summary. And then I just have that AI summary and expectations put on a single thing. I probably could split these up. Let me go back here, expand this out. So my AI summary is sitting by itself here in one field. Doing this again, I probably would split those two up and have one be the recommendation and one be the error/auditing piece, because I could give it more specific instructions. I could put it all in one, but as you saw, putting it all in one prompt starts to make that pretty big. And I'm not sure, in my experience of doing this for the past 3 years with AI, the more specific I can make that prompt, the more I can point that rifle right at it, the better my responses are. And plus, I could also play with different models, because every one of these I can use a separate model or a different model on. So there may be a model that I like better for AP. I could use that in here as well. And let's see, the reasoning gets updated after you make manual changes. So I'm not exactly sure what you're asking there, Julian. If you want to elaborate on that in there, I can let you know. So the AI is already set up. Your instructions are already set up, but you can refire. So let me go into here. So if you're thinking about that, so we can refire any of these again. So if I wanted to come back in, this actually gets fired every time it comes in. So as I leave that field, I could trigger this off to have it refire. If I made a change here, it can basically go and fire that recommendation off again and say, okay, and update it. And I probably in production would do that after I'm done, as I leave, I'd probably want a separate audit log that says, okay, take everything that's on this document and fill out an audit log. So so if you overrode that's exactly it. What you do is you would keep track of, here's what's in the audit, here's what the AI says. If I change anything here, I definitely have an audit log that a person changed that document. So now what I could do is I could go and compare. I could have another field in here that compares this, that's hidden, that basically compares it to and says, okay, here's an instance where the humanoid didn't follow my recommendation, or here's where they deviated. And you could even have it go back and say it deviated and here's why it deviated, right? Because you could even have it look at this and decide why, explain why the coding was different from your actual explanation. And you could have a field in here where the AP operator just came in and said, here's my notes, okay, changed FOAPAL, right? FOAPAL due to whatever. And then that could be used to write that audit log out. That makes sense. So yeah, a lot of flexibility here. I showed one specific use case that was based on a lot of research that I did, but now when I looked through it, I could see that probably breaking that AI piece up into two or three different fields would be really helpful. Right now, the way I have it set up is I have everything set in one. I have a warning section, I have my recommended section, and I have my reasoning, where those could be split off into three different settings. Plus, again, something that did a final audit of looking at everything that was entered and did it follow my recommendations or did it not, and if not, why, right? So yeah, definitely possible, all out of the box. I mean, as you saw, none of this is all point and click. None of this was set up hard. The hardest part is getting the XML files correctly. And Julian, you've dealt with that recently. So that was the hardest part, is getting the XML piece set up so that it would do link the chart of accounts. That's gotten really easy now because I can either do that with a database. I can take a database and export it into XML. So I've got a lot of flexibility there. Okay, are there any other questions before we bring the call in? And thanks, guys. I appreciate the questions. That helped us get some clarity here. All righty. Then I don't see any else coming in. We're going to say going once, going twice. Well, I thank everybody again. We couldn't do this without all your support, so I appreciate it. As always, if you have any questions, please reach out to myself, to Logan, to any of your favorite BIS person. Also, if you have any recommendations or anything you'd like to see from us on the Grooper side, please let me know, because we've been doing these, as you know, every 2 weeks. And by September, I'm starting to run out of ideas, quite honestly. So if anybody has any ideas that they'd like to see, or something that we don't feel we've answered this year, please let me know, and I will put that into to the top of the queue. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time. You will get the link here processed as soon as we get that processed. It usually takes us about a day. And I hope you all have a great week. And again, thanks for attending. Appreciate your time.